I don't know about you, but things just seem so loud right now. Not only is our world crazy, but then you add the news and social media on top of it, and it just feels sometimes like things are screaming at me. But what encourages me is to know that there's a God whose voice can silence all of it. There's a really awesome story about Jesus and his disciples where they are on boat. They're crossing the water from one side to another, and in the middle there's a huge storm, and the disciples are freaking out. They're afraid for their lives, and they go to try and find Jesus, and he's literally asleep. And so they wake him up, and he says, "Why are you afraid?" Now, it makes perfect sense to me that they're afraid because, I mean, this is a huge storm. They were afraid for their lives, but Jesus just calmly gets up and he rebukes the wind and the waves, and they're silenced. That's amazing to me, to know that even in the biggest storm that Jesus has peace, enough to even get a good night's rest, because he knows that he has the authority to calm those things, and he actually gives that same authority to me. There's another story I love about a man named Elijah in the Old Testament, and Elijah was a great man of God. He did amazing things for God, and he, in this story, had just done something incredible for God. It was cause for celebration, but instead, it was a pretty big inconvenience to some people's lives, and so they had a hit out for his life. They were ready to kill him, and so he was fleeing for his life, and he was, I'm sure, afraid and tired, and it got to the point where he said, "God, take my life. I'm ready to die." And God, being full of wisdom, he said, "Elijah, I think you should take a nap." So he lets Elijah sleep, and then he has food ready for him when he wakes up. And then after those things, he goes out to the mountainside because God told him to go. And it says that there was a huge windstorm, that it was so strong that it broke the rocks loose, but that God wasn't in it. And that there was a big fire and an earthquake, but God wasn't in those things. And after all of these crazy natural disasters, there was the sound of a gentle whisper, and that it was so powerful to Elijah that he had to wrap himself in his coat. I just picture it almost like as like just a warm hug, this wrap around presence. And that's the voice of God. Sometimes when things are loud like they are right now, it can be really hard to hear him. When things are loud, it's hard to hear a whisper. But he whispers because he's close. And just because you don't hear him doesn't mean that he's not speaking. So I would encourage you just to turn down the volume of your life, to quiet your heart in his presence, and to see what he has to say to you, because sometimes we are tired and afraid, and we can work ourselves up in a frenzy and jump to crazy conclusions and say, "Okay, I'm done. This is it. I've had enough." But it was in that place that God was patient with him. He gave him his physical needs, what he needed in the moment. He gave him shelter and food and rest. And then after that, he said, "Okay, Elijah, I want you to hear my voice again. This is who I am, and this is my wraparound presence, that I have the ability, I have the authority to silence the wind and the waves, those things that scare you, that overwhelm you, that make you afraid for your life. I know how to silence all of that. So come to me and hear what I have to say."